Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and yes, I am here. For those on the video, I have a camera issue, but we have to get the pod recorded. So here we are. We are recording Sunday night, so most of the way through game week 14. Dan, how's game week 14 going for you so far?
I'm quite happy with it. I'm on 67. I only done one transfer this week, and that was to bring in Brereton Diaz for Morris. Um, Obviously captained him. I've only got four double in players as well. They were Amos, who's only got two, Brady, four, Wells, one, who I vice captain, obviously Brereton Diaz with 28. Also have Giles for three, Bree for six, Aaron's one, Chair five, and Die for Brownhill five, and Pookie eight. Um, that's so far a green arrow of about 50 places, so I'm up to 156. And like I said, I haven't gone crazy for this double. I wasn't overly impressed, and I know there's still a couple of games left, and I could get punished, but yeah, I'm happy considering I've gone up 50 places.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's sort of pretty good. Speaking of being punished, I decided to go against Brereton Diaz, and it was more that particularly watching their game in midweek, I really wasn't sold,
Yeah,
and it would have resulted in selling Pookie. That was the only way I could have done it, and I didn't really want to sell Pookie. I thought Pookie could still do well. He got an assist. He could have had a goal as well, and I think he could have had another assist. So on another day, Pookie's in double digits, and it's even more vindication for holding. It's more just the number of people who had sort of the captaincy or captain fantastic on Brereton Diaz that's hurt me. I brought in Wells and Keane for Morris and Sargent. Obviously, Sargent then scored almost right away. I captained Wells, vice captain Keane. Wells gets taken off at half time. Keane blanks. My points came from Pookie 8, Brownhill 5, Chair 5, Bree 6, Brady 4, Giles 3. I benched Matson's 5, but really that was a choice for me between Matson and Brownhill, who both scored 5. So not too unhappy there. Obviously, it was a bad week, particularly like I said, bad week so far, particularly without Brereton Diaz. I've gone down about 40 places to 55th, which at one point I was worried that I wasn't even going to be in the top 100. Uh, so I was pleasantly surprised when the ranks updated and I was there. So hopefully get out of the game week with minimal damage. I've got four doublers, so hopefully get something in midweek and sort of minimise the damage. Going into the final sort of week of this set of boosts, still with the boost in hand. So it's 40 minus 4, which not ideal, but it could have been worse. Just quickly cover the pod team. We played away days. We're on 80 so far, so quite handy, up to 255th. We had Brereton Diaz, Jack Clark return for us, and Jai, Bree, Giles, Fernandez, Brady. We also had Wells, Rodriguez, Saar, and Johansson, who haven't done much for us. But yeah, we've got, I think it's 5 doublers left. So hopefully that one will be over 100 on the pod team. So that's certainly positive there. But we'll dive right into these games. We've obviously been talking about mentioned a couple of the things that happened. The first game we've got to cover is Norwich 2, Preston 3. Dan, do you want to kick us off on this one?
yeah, sure. So for Norwich, Gibbs was in, and he sort of replaced an attacking player, so they went more of a 4-3-3. But I think they would pushed Nunez a bit more further forward.
Yeah.
Um, Preston Fernandez was still at left wing back, and Brady is sort of playing the 10. Maguire's up front. Basically, Emil Reese, now he's over the transfer window, he's starting to score, got 2 goals. Do you know, a doubler that never even, like, I never even thought about. I don't know if you did, Angus.
I thought about it, and part of what put me off was the
Norwich game.
fixtures. Actually, wish I'd just, particularly this Norwich game. Wish I'd ignored that now.
Yeah. Fernandez and Brady both got an assist. And also the main man, Parrott, scored and then got injured. So
I did say after claiming, I was getting so close. I mean, I know it's only like game number 13 or whatever, but I was feeling so close, or I was feeling so good about my prediction that he was never going to score. And then I was just like, the only thing that was more perfectly representative of Troy Parrott than that was him finally scoring a goal and getting injured in the celebration.
yeah, it did make me chuckle. I'm guessing the main other well, there's 2 talking points. The Byron, should it have been a red? I think it should have been.
Yeah.
I'm normally a bit more lenient than a lot of people, but that's a clear red. And Norwich, do you think that their equaliser should have counted? Seemed very harsh. Hanley was sort of wrestling someone.
I thought it wasn't enough in terms of the
Yeah,
Hanley challenge to rule it out. I thought it should have been a goal.
yeah, so do I. So I'm guessing moving forward, we've obviously got the double for Norwich. Um, I'm on Aaron's and Pookie. One of the reasons why I didn't go for Keane from Wigan was I didn't think it was worth taking out Pookie for a -4 and then having to bring him in. And so far, it's worked out my way. Um, it's not the easiest double, but is there anyone else apart from Pookie or Aaron's on your radar? Obviously, Sargent scored again.
I was about to say, I think we have to still keep mentioning Josh Sargent.
Yeah,
He's moved out to the wider role, and he's still getting returns, whether it's goals or assists, and bonus. Like, I think there was one game recently for me where he didn't return but was in the bonus. Like, he has to be taken very seriously as an option. And if people are looking to save money, I'm not saying he can cover Pookie because I don't think he can. But it might be something where you could potentially get away with it if it allows you to do something else elsewhere, having him rather than Pookie. I wouldn't say do that, but it's just, you look at even the way they're scoring recently, and the points say that's a potential sort of way to find yourself some money, particularly if you want like a Sar or someone like that. Although we'll talk about Watford, don't get me wrong.
I'm looking forward to that.
I don't know. I mean, I think the other thing with Norwich obviously will be Giannoulis is close. And I think that will help them as well when they've been having to play Byram or Kenny McLean at left back. Just having an actual left back, I think, will help them out a bit as well. But I wouldn't be advising Giannoulis until you see him get back in the side and have a couple of games. So I'd say probably Aaron's, Pookie and Sargent for me.
Yeah. With Preston, a lot of people were just keeping them because of the double. We now know that they're not going to double in 17 or 20. So do you think you'll move away? I've got Brady. Do you still have Brady,
I
Angus?
do still have Brady, yeah.
It's tricky because it looks like he is playing this 10 role, but he's getting subbed
Yes.
off. So it's like a really tricky situation now because he's still going to get the clean sheets and things like that.
Yeah. I think it's fine. I think it's fine if you've got Brady, and I think it's fine if you've got Fernandez. I know everyone's been looking at these doubles, but I think with both of those two, you can keep a hold of them. It looks like for the most part, they're both going to be playing.
Yeah, it looks like Lowe's got to the point where Fernandes just had to play.
Yeah.
And he wants Brady still in the team, so he's finding a place for Brady as well.
Yeah, but I think the long-term starter at left wing back will still be Fernandes. So if people want to go Fernandes, I think he's a perfectly good option as well. I think probably those two, and I think Emil Reese is a genuine option. I think the problem is the no doubles, and that if people are like that's enough to rule him out, totally get that. But we've seen that he's a good striker and he will get goals.
Well, he got 16 last year, didn't he?
Yeah, but it's tough to justify with the doubles coming up and him not having any going with him, particularly sticking with him. So I'd probably say no on him, but it's one of those things we've talked about before about almost not getting too sucked into the doubles, that you ignore the sort of good single game week players. I think when it comes to game week 20, that's going to be different because so many teams have doubles that you're probably going to be missing out if you don't have at least majority doublers that week.
Especially as everyone's gonna know boosts in advance when they drop. And there's still quite a gap. You can sort of get the better strikers and players in your want.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be enough to rule them out for me. But I think particularly someone like a Brady or a Fernandes, you can just carry through and everything. Like for example, when it comes to game week 20, you could just bench them particularly at their sort of price. Like so they're slightly different for me, and those are the only ones I would recommend holding at this point.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to the next game. And I mentioned Ben Brereton Diaz a couple of times. We've got Blackburn 3, Rotherham 0. So just getting into this one a little bit. People were sort of looking out for what the lineup was going to be. Hedges at right wing back. Obviously the back three of Haya, Mayala and Wharton. Pickering left wing back, and front three of Smodics, Gallagher and Brereton Diaz. Obviously Brereton Diaz got the 2 goals. First the penalty, and then the second goal, which I know a couple of apps gave to Lewis Travis.
Yeah.
Which I argued was clearly racism. Just saying that all remotely long-haired white men look the same, which, to be fair, particularly Brereton Diaz and Bradley Dack, but
they do look like
and Lewis Travis, like they're not the most dissimilar looking men.
There's a lot of
particularly
hair
from a distance.
There's a lot of hair at Blackburn.
Yeah. So, but it was quite clearly him. He did get 2 goals, and then Dolan came on and put Smodics in for a third. So I think those, particularly on a defender, I know some were on Hyam or Pickering, and those on Brereton Diaz are the real winners. I know there were quite a few sort of on things like midfield dynamos with the likes of Hedges and Dolan. Obviously, Dolan, you've got away with it in terms of him coming off the bench and getting an assist.
Hedges got a bonus, didn't he?
I think he did get bonus, yeah. So yeah, I think there's quite a lot of popularity around. Obviously, Rotherham on the other side. I know some have Johansson. That's not gone to plan. Wood wasn't in the lineup. That was an injury that wasn't announced beforehand. And Tom Eaves started his first game of the season. I know people will be looking at them with a couple of doubles coming up as well. But what are your thoughts on the players from these 2 teams, Dan?
Well, there's no need to talk about Brereton Diaz, really.
No.
We know. Even he's just better than this league, I think.
Yeah.
Last year we wondered if it was a fluke because he sort of tailed off as Blackburn did towards the end of last season. But I think he's got 7 goals now, 6 or 7 league goals now. The one I am interested in is Smodics. Goal and assist again. There's not been too many midfielders stand out throughout the season. Um, and now he's over his injury. That they've paid a bit of money to sign him, so you think it's someone like that. Thomason likes, so maybe he does become more of a regular. Although I'd like to see it. Rotherham, I'm worrying about Rotherham now. I know they've started well, but they're struggling away from home. That like attacking wise, they're not really creating anything. Um, and they've had a good start, but they're now sitting in 17th on 15 points, and that's only 4 points above the relegation zone. With their squad starting to worry now, new manager. Even though I like the appointment, I think it's a good appointment. I think you do have to start to worry. Um, as you've mentioned about the doubles, I think they double in 17 and 20.
Yeah, they
Is that
double
correct?
both.
I've had a Bengy for Nip since game week 3 or 4, so I'm keeping him now. There's no one getting rid of him. Johansson, I think's an option as well.
Yeah.
I think they'll be all right at home. I think they'll do well at home. It's just away from home. They're just not creating anything.
Yeah, I'd potentially include, if we're talking about the potential Rotherham assets, I'd also include potentially looking at Barlasser. I know everyone
Yeah,
has a Bene. Barlasser, I think, has 7 points less than him. Is on the set pieces, which is obviously something they do have some joy from. I think he's on the penalties as well. It's either
I
him
think
or
he is
Wiles.
actually. Yeah, I think it's Barlasser because they got one, didn't they, midweek
Um,
against Millwall.
Barlasser.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he
so
was.
he's on the penalties as well. So that's where I'd potentially look at someone like him as well.
Yeah,
Um, it's same price, or 0.1 cheaper than a Bene, but it's just like if you're going in new, that might be a place to go. But we'll move on from them. Um, Blackburn will also play again in midweek, but we won't. We won't do a proper pod or whatever before then. So before the next game week. So, but we will do the spaces. Just letting people know now. On Thursday night. So one of the things we will discuss on there is whatever happens in the two midweek games. But we'll move on to the next game, which was the Friday night game between QPR and Reading, which finished 2-1 to QPR. Dan, do you want to kick us off on this one?
yeah. So for QPR, the big news was obviously no Joe Willock. They've had um, some. They've normally struggled without Willock in the past, so I was intrigued to see how they did. They brought in your man Dykes up front, Angus,
Yeah,
and
Big Linden.
Big Linden, the Scot. Reading made a couple of interesting decisions. Ince and Hoylett were benched, and it, they made it known on Sky that it was because they were in the red zone.
Yeah.
So they've obviously been playing too many minutes. Um, I'm guessing the main talking points throughout this game was probably the penalty decisions. QPR, they both received a penalty each, but obviously QPR could have had one before Reading initially got theirs. Like we mentioned, Dykes got 2 goals, but Reading did take the lead. Um, Definitely a penalty. I can't remember who it was, but he sort of just recklessly went in for a challenge and caught.
Irik Bunham.
Yeah, on loan from Villa, good
Yeah.
youngster. Caught Zhao on. Well, I think Zhao actually stood on his foot, but
Yeah.
I can see why the ref gave it. Carroll took the penalty, even though Zhao was on him, or normally is on him. And then QPR answered back near enough straight away. I will mention Laird went off injured and Kaike came on, who assisted Dykes for the first. And then there's a penalty for QPR, which Dykes packed away. I think it was a fair result. I don't know what you thought about this game, Angus.
Yeah. So the other things I guess worth mentioning, or expanding on, I guess, because you did mention it about the penalty shout for QPR at 0-0, where it's pretty blatant handball by
Yeah,
Hutchinson for Reading, often Eric Boodham knockdown. It looked like Jeff Hendrick conveniently stepped in front of the referee just as it happened. So in terms of why it wasn't given, no issue on the penalty for Reading. I think it was basically that Eric Boonham doesn't give Joao a place to land. So when his foot comes down, it comes down on his foot, and then obviously the slide sort of takes him down. For me, it's a penalty. And then the other one, aside from the late penalty, which was also a penalty, was the Andy Carroll challenge.
that's a
That was
yellow
the other
for me.
talking point. I think it's a yellow. I think there were two factors that made it a yellow. One was that Carroll gets a slight touch on the ball, which I think saves him. And the other one is that the contact is less than it might have been, essentially because Tyler Roberts jumps back because he sees Andy Carroll flying in at him. So it's like, Tyler Roberts has probably saved Andy Carroll to an extent, the way he dove in there. But I think it was a yellow card for me. But I don't think I would have been up in arms if he'd been sent off. Like, I certainly would have seen the
Yeah,
logic if
I
the
wouldn't
referee had
either.
sent him off. But it's probably just a yellow for me. And yeah, Lyndon Dykes. That's the main talking point. It does look, in the last couple of games, like the couple of goals he got when he went off for Scotland have made a big difference. I'm a big fan of him. I've made no secret of that. But I thought his all around play looks like a more confident player than earlier in the season. His close control when they played into him, the way he brought other players into the game, looked better than it did earlier in the season. Which is encouraging for them because while there's positivity, Beale gave a time frame on Willock. Sounds like he's going to miss the next 4 games, but fears would have been that it would have been much worse. Where I think for Gaffr point of view, or from the Gaffr point of view, I think he's going to be back in about game week 19.
Yeah.
But like they need guys like Dykes to step in and do well while Willock is out of the team. Tyler Roberts tries hard but isn't going to get you goals, so you need players to fill the goal scoring void. And if Dykes can be playing with confidence again, then he'll be able to chip in with goals.
So obviously the main player though is Chair, isn't
Yeah,
it? Especially now, I think he still got bonus and
yeah.
didn't didn't really do much. Anyone else? Obviously, Laird, who our good friend Pontus is convinced is the best right back in the league.
Best fullback in the league. He didn't narrow it down to right back. He said the best fullback in the league.
Yeah, I pointed out he's got to stay fit.
Yeah. What does that old saying? The best ability is availability. but yeah, I mean, I think Powell is still an option.
Yeah,
Chair. I wouldn't get sucked into going someone like Kakai. He had that one cross for the goal. If you watch the rest of his delivery, it was awful. He just had that. He just happened to have that one cross go exactly right.
yeah.
He didn't suddenly become a better player. So no, I probably wouldn't be looking at anything else. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have Field, who was also in the bonus, and I think but you don't necessarily need to replace him as your cheap midfielder. But no, there's not much else I'd be looking at. The next game we've got, though, we'll move on. is Blackpool 3, Watford 1. Now, obviously, I mentioned the whole Ismail Assar thing. Interesting changes, I think, for Watford in this one. I think they actually played Dan Gosling at right back.
Yeah.
Because
Dan Gosling shouldn't even be playing in centre mid, let alone right back.
Because Mario Gaspar was out injured, and Gaki is still out injured. They basically had no one, so it became very makeshift. Sierralta was only fit enough for the bench. I think then was brought on and I think went off injured again.
That's bad news.
Which, given that he was a late decision before the game, I'd need to double check to confirm that. Don't necessarily take my word for it, but he was a late decision before the game. So if he has played and got injured again, that you'd question the manager a little bit on that. The big difference for them going forward, at least, is that Imran Louza came back into the lineup, and Bayo started this game. Louza scored their goal with a very good free kick. It was won by Ismail Assar. And then, but the story really, I guess, is Blackpool. They were probably the better team. They had more chances, or rather, they had more chances than Watford, despite having 26% of the possession. They had 26% of the possession, and yet they had 18 shots.
That's worrying. That means they're getting carved open or played through Watford too easily.
It's just amazing. I love stats like that. It's like for almost every percentage point of possession, there was a shot. And they scored 3 goals. Gary Medine scored, and then Jerry Yates scored 2 in the last 10 minutes.
2 good finishes as well.
Yeah. Well taken goals. I think they have some decent players, Blackpool. I'm not sure, I'm not saying they're going to be good this season. They're probably still going to end up battling it out at the bottom of the table. But I think they've got some decent players, and I think they have players that can make the difference in individual games. Obviously, they lost Bowler, but Yates is finally on the board. Medine, they are players that will get you not lots of goals, but combined enough goals. Combined with particularly Lavery as well, between the 3 of them. Corbiano, I think, is a good player. It sounded like Patino was very good again. There's going to be some games where they struggle defensively, but it seems to be settling defensively. Like, there are still going to be games where they concede a number of goals, but it does seem to be settling a bit more defensively. It's just whether they can score enough. But we're not going to spend too much time talking about Blackpool because no one really wants to talk about Blackpool. No offense to Blackpool fans, very good win for you, but people are coming to hear us talk about this game to talk about Watford. Dan's been waiting to talk about Watford and this game. Yeah, so I'll let you talk about Watford here.
This can't be just like a manager thing now. By the way, Bilic has lost more games than the previous manager has already.
Yeah.
Edwards. Everyone got excited that they go and beat Stoke 4-0, and I think Stoke basically they got caught in between a rock and a hard place, whether to attack or defend. At 2-3-0 down, and they were getting destroyed on the counter. But you got to question Bilic as well. Like he dropped the Sprilla and Davis. You can't drop your best players in this league. And do you really need 2 holding midfielders against Blackpool? You just don't need it. And I think last year in the Premier League, there was known that there was a lot of problems in the dressing room. Well, a lot of the players are still there, and too many of them think that they're better than the Championship. And let's be honest, we saw last time they were in the Championship, they turned up for half the season and got promoted. They could still do that, especially if they keep Pedro and Sarr, but they don't look as good defensively as they did last time, and especially without Sierralta. You're playing Dan Gosling at right back. I don't know. I haven't had a Watford player all year, and that's not just because I'm a Luton fan. It's more the fact that I just can't trust them. Like we've had numerous problems with Sarr. Pedro's obviously injured at the minute. Like you have Sarr, don't you, Angus?
Yeah.
Are you happy to keep him?
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing for me is I didn't have him through all the nonsense of the no-shows and everything.
Yeah.
Game week 13 was the first time I owned him, and he returned for me. So, obviously it's annoying with the blank in this one, but I mean, we'll see whether he survives for me. But it's not because I necessarily want to get rid. But I think Sierralta is a miss at the back, like you say. I think if you ask Watford fans, Christian Cabaselli has played far too many minutes this season. And there's been times where they've actually needed Daniel Backman to be good in goal. Like we know he's a good goalkeeper. We know he's looked not completely out of place in the Premier League.
Well, West Brom battered them, didn't they?
Yeah.
At the start of the season.
Yeah, and this is the concern. I mean, they had Troost-Ekong come back in this one, but I also think it's exposing that some of these options, like I know Bio's got a goal or two, but I don't think he's good enough. Like even in the attack, like I think it's showing that like the first choice team, you get them all in there, that's a good team. Even getting to the secondary options, you start thinking there's a bit of a drop off here. So I think that's something that would be a bit alarming is the performance of some of these other guys when they're actually starting games. Like it's different from Bayo when he's getting the odd goal off the bench. When you would then ask him to start a game and need him to start a game and he basically does nothing against Blackpool, that's a problem. I think they'll probably be fine, and I wouldn't necessarily be shying away from their options, but just like you said, I was guilty of it a little bit, although in terms of after their game against Stoke, not necessarily an overreaction, but sort of like getting tantalized by what it could be, where it's like and I went and got Sarr, which went fine for me, but it's one of those where you're not necessarily going to be looking to pile in the way we thought we would be after that Stoke game.
They do have a stretch though, which is on paper pretty good.
Yeah.
You've obviously got the next three: home to Norwich, away at Millwall, home to Luton, which will probably be tricky games, you'd have thought. And then got Wigan away, Cardiff away. Then they've got the double Coventry, Reading, Bristol City, Hull. That's a ridiculous run. Like even I might have to get a yellow belly in.
Yeah, you just sort of hope it's sort of a bit clearer at that point. I think Pedro coming back would probably help them, but yeah, just that bit of extra clarity would be good as well. But we'll move on from them to the next game, which is Birmingham 3, Bristol City 0. Just like we all expected.
Wow.
Dan, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yes, so Birmingham made a lot of changes. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Hardy Dean, the youngster Hall, and Hannibal were in. They moved Chong up front next to Hogan. Deeney was put to the bench. The big news for Bristol City was Naismith was injured, and it was Wells and Conway up front. it's all about Trusty in this
Yeah.
game, wasn't it? The American 2 goals. Chong got 2 assists. Like I said, this wasn't a fluke. They had 4 big chances to nil in this match. Bristol City just couldn't defend a set piece, could they?
No, I mean that's
All
the big
three
issue,
goals.
isn't it?
Um, and moving on to Bristol City, I know a lot of people got a striker in. I got Wells, you seen Vime and Conway. Um, a few people brought the odd defender in. But they now only got 1 point out of 15, which I know they've played a couple of tricky games, but before this run, they were near enough on the playoffs and they've lost, well, 4 out of 5, and now they're just above the relegation zone. And we mentioned last year they were having to score a minimum of two goals to get points. That's not sustainable for forever. You
No.
can't go into games needing 2 goals just to get a point. You have to be able to keep the odd clean sheet here and there. Um, I've got Wells. I'm probably looking to get rid of him. You've now got the thing where both strikers went off on 45 minutes, so they probably don't even start the second game
Oh, I
because
have
they've
no
still got
idea. I've
exactly.
watched Pearson's comments and I have no idea what he's going to do.
Might bring in Martin back in. Um, but Birmingham's such a funny side because I don't really want any of their assets, but there are a few cheap ones. Trusty, was he 4-5? Probably go
Yeah.
up to 4-6. You think after this game we can, if we do get budget busters in the next set with that game week 20, you'd think he's probably a decent option considering
Well,
there's
you've
not
got
many.
our old friend Collan was
Colin as
4.6 as
well.
well.
Yeah,
Um,
they then become options. Um, Chong, like I said, 2 assists again, and since him and Bielik have started playing, they've looked a lot more balanced side. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
yeah, I was actually looking at Trusty even before this game, so it's quite funny
Yeah,
that he then popped up with 2 goals. Um, I think I saw that they haven't lost a game that Bielik has played now, um, which speaks to the sort of balance that you're talking about as well. I think. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to cover in Birmingham. In terms of Bristol City, I mean, I brought in Wells and captained him, and he was hooked at half time. Um, don't say you weren't warned about the Bristol City defenders.
yeah,
We really weren't high on them. I'll just touch briefly. As I said, I watched some of Nigel Pearson's post-match comments, in part because I was trying to get clues about what might happen in midweek. And he basically said there were a number of players that could have gone off at half time that it just weren't up to it. The big thing he focused on was that he wanted them to just simplify the game in the second half. So that's where particularly someone like Chris Martin coming on, what that sounded to me was like, we're going to stop trying to play and we're just going to try and hit it long to the big man and play off him.
yeah.
Um, and even that, and arguably it was even worse after that. So I have no idea what lineup is going to come out in midweek, but um,
I think Naismith, being a Luton fan and having watched how they played against Luton, yes, Naismith has made a couple of errors, but he gets the ball and he passes through the lines, which I think they might have struggled with at this match.
well, I mean, after doing it when he had to go off in the last game, they put Andy King at centre back again.
Yeah,
I think to try and make up for that. The problem is that Andy King's not a centre back, although I don't think that was the problem with the goals they conceded. Um, but it's one of those things where it replicates it to a degree, but it's also someone who's not necessarily used to passing the ball from that area of the pitch. So It might have upset the balance slightly, but yeah, I mean, it was a terrible game for them. Yeah, Wells won't be staying for me regardless of what he does in the second game. So
Yeah.
but we'll move on. Onto another doubling team, which was Wigan 1, Cardiff 3. So obviously, for people who were keeping an eye out, who had gone with Wigan assets, the back three was back for Wigan, with Kerr, Watmore, and Bennett, Derrickwen and McLean as wing backs, and then Keane, McGuinness, and Wyke sort of front three. They seemed to struggle in this game. I think particularly with some of the chances that Cardiff created. I know there were a couple of penalty shouts for Wigan. I haven't seen them properly, but I know there was one that they were sort of sure was a penalty that they didn't get, which teams are always more sure that they should have had penalties. But good win for Cardiff. They've been doing better recently. And you had sort of Robinson kick off the scoring. Ojo with his first goal in, I think it was something like 19 months. And Ryan Wintle from out wide at the end. The best goal, just because of what it represented and everything, was Charlie Wyke getting a goal. Obviously, if everyone knows the story, he essentially died on the training pitch last season. Had to be revived. It was a long recovery for him, and that was his first goal since that. Obviously, it doesn't help people for Gaffr, but it was the moment of the game as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I mean, I think Wigan, if you've got those assets, I mean, you're hoping for something from the second game. I think they've got a decent run as well. And I think double in 20. So it's going to be tough to get rid of some of those players. I guess the main thing to talk about with this is Cardiff.
Yeah.
Up to 10th. And, we were talking earlier about particularly some of their defensive performances and defensive numbers. I mean, obviously, Callum Robinson, I think he's got a couple of goals and a couple of assists now.
Yeah, 2 goals, 3 assists in 6 games.
Yeah. So, he's done well. A couple of those assists are cheap, but, he's still got them. There's one where he played like a 4-yard pass and Mark Harris pinged it in from, I think, 30 yards, But, he's got those, that's still there. We've mentioned a couple of times with the defence as well in terms of improvements there. I know I'd mentioned Romeo, who obviously then got injured. But I think if they can put something, there are a couple of players there that I think you can rely on at this point if you want to go to them. I think Perry and G will play most games. I think Kipre has been very good for them at centre back. He was very good in the Blackburn game that I watched in midweek. And I think Nkunku at left back is an interesting one, particularly because he's a bit cheaper. But I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Dan.
Yeah, I think a bit disappointing for all the people who had Wigan assets. Like Nyambe and Asgard didn't even play. I had Amos, but he he didn't play great. Like you mentioned, Robinson's the main one, isn't he? He's now playing up front, and he's getting returns, but it's going to be one of them because he's 8.5 because he got priced on his West Brom. But it shouldn't really make a difference. You get the feeling he's like their talisman now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just 8.5 for a Cardiff midfielder. Unless it is for like a a double, then I think it's worth it. I'm guessing a Dowder again,
Yeah,
5.2, just someone who you can bench. Um, as you mentioned, they're putting up some decent defensive numbers. So I know it's hard because most of us has had the two Middlesbrough, Brady, Aaron's, Sheffield United defenders. It is hard to think about a Cardiff defender because they don't really have attacking potential. I know you've
we say
mentioned
that to think
Romeo.
who've got two assists in this game.
Yeah, that is true. Um, but yeah, I think they've gone under the radar, so it's someone. It's definitely a team to start thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll move on to the next game. Um, Keeping up with the results we totally expected. Stoke 3, Sheffield United 1. Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, this was a shock. At least the highlights picked probably a good game to go on first. It was end to end.
Oh, we'll talk about the highlights.
Oh god, I know where this is going.
Yeah,
Um, so Stoke played 4-3-3. Um, Jagielka back in at centre back. Um, Sterling was at right back, and they put in Jamie's favourite, moved across to left back. That's Fox. Um, they played a front three of Gale as the striker with Fosu and Campbell either side. Sheffield United, you posted a list of how many players they had out for this game. Well, it was definitely what 8 to 10 players out.
yeah,
It was ridiculous. So no Baldock, Bogle, Sander Berger, and McBurney. That was just from the game they played in midweek. I know a few people were starting to move on Bogle, um, and basically they've got so many players out. They had to move to four at the back,
yeah.
and we saw last year their squad's just not made for four at the back. So they struggled really. I think that didn't help. Um, as I mentioned, the game was end to end, especially in the first half. But we've got to talk about Jagielka goal and assist. Was it first goal since 2019
Against the club where it
against
all
yeah.
started as well.
Um, and look, I don't know what to make from Stoke because no one has for about ever since they've been in the Championship. Um, but Sheffield United only 1 point in the last three. Are you starting to worry about Sheffield United? I know they had a few chances in this game, but it looked like they were just gonna. They were getting points so easily that they were just gonna like move away from the rest of the pack. But it doesn't seem to have happened.
Um, I'm slightly worried, in part because I thought they were just starting to get players back.
Yeah,
We had Davies come back, we had Bogle come back, we had Sharp come back. They just started to be getting players back, and then more players are dropping. Now, obviously, McBurney will be back because that was just a one-game suspension for his fifth yellow card. Um, but Bogle has apparently picked up an injury in training. Don't know how bad that is. All I saw was that he picked up an injury in training. Berger had the injury at the end of their previous game, and initially they thought it was really bad. I know that sort of scans came back and there was no sort of break or whatever, broken bones or anything, which they were initially worried about. Um, and in fairness, Heckingbottom had all but said that Berger would be out of the game. He basically said, "We're going to be careful; he'll probably miss the game." But when they're getting to this extent of players missing, it makes you worry a little bit. He was talking up the idea that Ahmedhodzic and Osborne might be back for this game. They didn't make it back, they didn't make it for this one. So you would hope if they were getting that close that they'd be back for the next game. If they can just get 3 or 4 players back from this lengthy list, and they can just sort of, quite apart from anything else, just go out on the field in their normal system, I think that will
yeah.
make a big difference to them. So I'm slightly worried, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to overreact to one or two games where, particularly a couple of the chances go another way, and where, you know, Stoke seem to have turned up out of nowhere as well, where it's just sort of like, I don't understand this game and I'm not sure how to engage with it. So it's tough to draw too many conclusions from it.
Bringing any Stoke in, Angus?
No,
No, me neither.
no, I don't think I'd need to see more from them. But I think those who have Lewis Baker, I think he picked up an assist again in this one. Still a perfectly good pick, as we've said from the start of the season. He will keep ticking over, and so I think he's fine. But yeah, and if you've gone to someone like Bogle, obviously depending on the news on his injury, you might have to go away again. And Jai, I think he's still a perfectly fine pick.
Yeah, we had a discussion about NDI, didn't we? With Jamie. Jamie wasn't a fan because before this game, what was his returns? I can't remember. It was like double figures.
Like he hauls or he scores like one or two.
Yeah.
Um,
I've had NDI quite a bit this year, and for me, you can't trust him with an armband.
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion we reached, wasn't it? In that conversation, you could, it's perfectly fine to hold and to sort of carry through, and if you look at his scores over a number of games, you'll be happy, but you won't necessarily want to put an armband on him in any given game.
Yeah, he's quite just a nice set and forget because he seems pretty more nailed this year.
Yeah.
You might have the odd game when he gets rested, but I think he's 7.5, 7.6, and
That's
at that
range.
price, that's fine.
I
think that's it.
Yeah, and that you really do have the odd game where he'll only get a rest. Like, he's not going to sort of get left out of the team. He will be back in if he gets left out for a game. You don't have to worry about his place as such. But yeah, we'll move on from these two. So the next game we've got is Millwall 2, Middlesbrough 0.
Oh God, here we go, Angus.
Yeah.
This is your game.
This is, yeah. I think you're glad that I get to talk about this. So the lineup drops. Isaiah Jones is back, but Ryan Giles is left out. We were like, oh yeah, it's gonna be fine. It's they're gonna be back. It's gonna be back to normal. Nope. Mark Bowler continued at left wing back, played at left wing back again. Front two of Akpom and Muniz. For Millwall, they continued in the back four that they went to in the last game. Rowett didn't rule out at some point returning to the back three, but I think because it worked and because he said he'd been contemplating it for a while as a way to try and sort of fix some of their issues, I don't think he'll change away from it. And if you look at it, it allows them to get more attacking personnel on the pitch, as you would expect. But they've gone quite aggressive with it. They had Vogelsammer, Fleming, Bury, and Bradshaw all starting. For the second game in a row, there was no Malone in the squad, and that's not a fitness issue.
Wow.
Rowett confirmed it after the midweek game. It's not a fitness issue, it's a selection decision, which is very interesting.
Well, that means he prefers, obviously Murray Wallace is playing there, but also Styles is ahead of him as well, you'd think.
Yeah, Styles came on the, I think, left wing in this game, which is the other place where you could theoretically see Malone playing. But that means that Bury and Styles are ahead of Malone on the left-hand side of the pitch as well for a role on the left-hand side. So that would be a bit of a concern. But yeah, and then it's 2 more goals from Fleming after his stunner in midweek. Deflected free kick, managed to. It's a 2-man wall. He managed to score deflected off a 2-man wall.
This is the defender's fault in the wall.
Yeah, they like split and one of them turned or whatever. Like, I think it's been given as a Fleming goal. To me, the more I watched it, the more it was going wide until it hit the defender. But an absolute mess in the wall. Like, you can't blame Stefan. He sets up a basic 2-man wall to cover that possibility that Fleming takes a shot from probably a bad shooting position. He puts that 2-man wall in there, and they do nothing. In fact, they do worse than nothing because they end up deflecting the ball in, and then Fleming gets the second as well. Right after the second goal, Ryan Giles comes on. So Ryan Giles actually ended up getting a half clean sheet.
Yeah.
He played 40 minutes and got a half clean sheet, which was capped off by Isaiah Jones playing 90 minutes and scoring 0. I missed him out when I was talking about my team deliberately to come onto it in this game. Isaiah Jones comes back from his suspension for 5 yellow cards, gets booked. And then the -1 for conceding 2 goals, so he ends up with a 0. A lot of people had already sold. I was hoping with those two that I was going to gain on people who were also benching Giles, and that didn't really go to plan for me. Although I suppose the Giles with 3, that was something. Jones with 0, much less. What are your thoughts to start off with on those two, Dan?
It's a nightmare, isn't it? Because what was it? Wilder's last game, they both got dropped. Came on near enough. Was it half time?
Just after, I think, like literally, like within 5 minutes of the second half.
He gets sacked, so we're like, well, they're both going to come back in now. There's no excuse. But then Jones didn't play.
That wasn't because was his suspension. Jones didn't play because of suspension.
But Giles did, which is fine. And we then get to this game, and Giles isn't playing, but Jones is. And you're at the point now is, do you give him one more game and you just hope, well, the manager's just got to play him? But the worst thing is they're coming on at like ridiculously early anyway.
Yeah. Which I suppose on the other hand is kind of positive, and at least they have time to get you something. It's not like some of these players, like you've had instances recently of guys coming on in the last 5 minutes or whatever. Like at least they're coming on early enough to plausibly get you something. It's not really a defence, but it's just sort of like, I guess you could also look at it as a positive.
But also they're conceding. They've been conceding goals all season. Like, I'm doubled up, and you've got to get rid. The problem is or at least down to 1. The problem is you don't know who's going to play.
Yeah.
So you're at the point where you near enough have to get rid of both. But they're so good when they do play. I think you've got to go down to 1 and just hope it works out. Yeah, I know it's a bit different for you because you're going to be on your overhaul. You can just get rid of them. I can't.
Yeah, I haven't decided.
Yeah, it's tricky because, like I said, they're both 2 of the best wing backs in the league. But
yeah, and I've sort of been so bullish, and it's generally been correct, even when they've been conceding. They've still been scoring points and everything. So, but I'm very undecided on what to do with them. But I do think it's a bit of a nightmare at this point. It's almost the worst possible outcome in this game in terms of gaining clarity on which one to sell, because Giles plays 40 minutes and outscores Jones, who plays 90 minutes. So it's sort of like, what do you do?
But surely they're going to go back to it and play him at some point, you'd have thought.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing I guess we should mention is it doesn't really feel like they're any closer at this point to hiring a manager.
It looks like Carrick now, is it?
Carrick seems to be the closest one, or the latest one they're in talks with, but we know they've talked to multiple other managers. It'll probably be one of those things where it'll come together very quickly. They'll interview all these people and then it'll come together very quickly in terms of who they actually hire. But there's part of me that's sort of like, well, what if they hire someone who wants to play a back four? What does that mean?
It could mean they both play as wingers.
It could. But it's just one of those things. I think you can introduce so many unknowns that it makes it tough. I certainly won't be doubled up come the deadline. Whether I have one or none, I'm undecided. But I think for me, the double up is over.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Anything else on either of these teams?
No, just Fleming really. I think worth keeping an eye on at the minute.
Yeah. Next game we have is Coventry 0, Burnley 1. Dan, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, it's not one of the better games of the weekend from what I heard. Coventry's main news was Walker was in for Godden. Burnley made a few interesting. No Muric, Roberts was benched. And Madsen came back in. Fatino played right back. Burnley's won 1-0. Taylor got another goal. Someone who just keeps popping up. I've not really thought about him. I've obviously gone Brownhill. Coventry, they didn't really offer too much in this game. They look like they were really gun ho at the start. They've now tried to sort out their defence and they're not looking as good going forwards. I think they're missing Hamer and O'Hare just to play passes through the lines, either from closer the 10 position or a bit deeper. I'm guessing that the main thing is Burnley, as they've got a double coming up. Well, they both have doubles coming up. For Coventry, I would only be thinking of Victor, maybe a defender. And for Burnley, the main thing is what do you do with Madsen? Because he's not 100% a starter in this team. You've then got Taylor and Brownhill look pretty much nailed. And then you've got Jay Rodriguez, who's gone a bit quiet recently. What's your views on both assets, mainly for the doubles?
Yeah, so I think for Coventry, if you can find a defensive asset you like, I don't hate it. That might be the goalkeeper. It might be going with someone like Bidwell. Or, that back three seems to be settled again, so it might be a case of going with one of them, hoping maybe for like a set piece return or something. But Victor's the main one. Godden being left out introduces that little bit of doubt, because I think if they want to get another striker some game time, it will be Godden that gets left out. So whether that's Walker or the young lad Tavares.
Yeah, Waghorn's injured, is he?
I think so. But just whoever, if they want to get other forwards into the game, it'll be Godden that drops out. So that would be enough to put me off. On Burnley, I wouldn't be too spooked if you're a Connor Roberts owner. He's played, I think, almost every minute. So a game off was going to be coming at some point. It's unfortunate for you that it happened this game, particularly if you were on something like Park the Bus. But it was going to be coming at some point. Harwood Bellis is probably the safe one if you want someone that's going to play every game. because I guess it's introduced the idea that Roberts might get the odd game off, where Harwood Bellis is the one who plays every game. Maatsen is the one I would go for. The upside is still there. I mean, even that game, he's basically done nothing. He's got booked. It's still a 5-pointer. Like, if you get that from your defender on a quiet game, you're probably going to be pretty happy. There's going to be the odd game he doesn't play, but I mean, I think it was midweek he didn't play at all.
I still think though that's very unlikely. Though I still think like if he's benched, he'll come on, especially with the 5 subs now.
Yeah, but he's the one I'd go for defensively still. I've thought about Teller at points. It's just not been a priority for me, but we know Brownhill. He's in the bonus again, and he'll keep ticking over. I think it's perfectly viable to go with both. Like, I don't think it needs to be an either or. I think you can have Brownhill and Teller, particularly with the double coming up.
Yeah.
And I'd probably like more going Teller and Brownhill than one of them and Rodriguez, because I think I said it on the last pod or one of the recent pods. The upside isn't there on Rodriguez for me. Like, there's not many points he's going to get into double digits, for example. Like, because he's not really going to be in the bonus or anything like that. So he probably has to score multiple goals to get into double digits.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone like Brownhill or Teller, where one return and they might be in double digits just off that. So I'd probably, like, if you wanted sort of double attack, for example, I'd probably lean more that way. But yeah, that's sort of where I would go with them. But like I say, if you've got someone like Rodriguez, I wouldn't rush to sell. It's just
You probably have to hold now. The
Yeah.
fixtures are decent, then the double. You just got to hope he returns.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hold him for the 17 double and then sell him, that makes sense. I don't think you can sell him now going into game week 15 when they have a double in 17. Like, I wouldn't necessarily be advising to sell anyone who's actually playing that has a double that week unless it gets you something much better. But we'll move on from them. The next game we've got is Swansea 2, Sunderland 1. Sunderland obviously continue to have their issues in terms of strikers. Swansea, the big thing was Obafemi dropped back down to the bench. Sorinola was on the bench as well, along with Norton and Cham. So it was a Wood, Darling, and Cabango back 3. Latabodiere came back into the starting lineup for the first time since dislocating his shoulder. He'd been on the bench the last couple, but he started this one. And it was Cooper and Cundle in support of Pirro. Cooper got the first goal, and then Darling got the second, and Jack Clark pulled one back for Sunderland. And I think in terms of the sort of Gaffr assets, we've talked about Manning before. He was involved in the goals, almost sort of like, without sort of getting too into it, like the hockey assist, the assisting the assist almost on both goals, I think. I think he's certainly one to bear in mind. I think he's still a good option. And then on the other side, it's Clark. He's one of the top scoring midfielders in the game. I think he's still under 6 million. I think he's 5.9. So I'd be looking at him. I don't know if you have much else to add on these, Dan.
No, you pretty much nailed it. I think Sunderland, as you mentioned, are starting to struggle now without the strikers, need him back desperately.
Yeah.
So Clark's the main option for me.
Yeah. But we'll move on to our last game, which is West Brom 0, Luton 0.
It's not the last game. You're forgetting the Huddersfield game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I sort of peek
which
behind the
you've done
curtain.
numerous
You
times.
guys have no idea how many times I have forgotten Huddersfield Hull. I forgot it like within half an hour of having watched it today, so I forgot that it had happened. So that's how well it's gone. But yeah, Dan, talk to us about West Brom Luton.
Yeah, so 0-0. West Brom, they changed system 3-4-3. Swift dropped out. Palmer went in goal in midweek. They finally dropped the worst goalie in the league in Button. And Luton, the main news was Bradley came back in um, from midweek. Luton played Bree right centre back, so he came in for Fred Onyedinma. West Brom started the game quite well. First 15 minutes had 2 or 3 chances. Thomas Asante caused us a lot of problems. But after that, Luton gradually got back in the game, and West Brom never really looked like scoring second half. I'm not saying Luton did either. Closest we got to was Potts had a header cleared off the line. Adebayo had sort of a scuff shot that flicked up and nearly went in. Palmer saved that. But it was a 0-0, pretty comfortable for Luton defensively. So Bree gets his 6 points. Bit disappointing, no bonus this week for Bree, but just the best defensive asset in the game. But like as I mentioned, I'd keep an eye out for Thomas Asante. I think he's 6.5, and it's a decent option, especially as he will qualify for Budget Buster if they do decide to have it as a boost this year. I don't know if you've got anything else, Angus.
I have two things to say about this game, and two things only. One, I'm not touching West Brom assets as long as Steve Bruce is still in a job. And two, I have no idea how they decided the one game with no goals in it would be fourth on the highlights show.
Two big teams, Angus.
Baffling. Yeah, you had games with 4 or 5 goals in coming after this one. I don't know what they're doing, but
I think they needed a quick game before the adverts, Angus.
But yeah, that's all I have on this one.
Fair enough.
So the last game we have is Huddersfield Hull. I watched about 55 minutes of this one before I had to leave. But Huddersfield won 2-0. Interesting for them, the back three, and then obviously Thomas and Jackson as wing backs, Rodoni and Kamara in midfield. Holmes, Ward, and Rhodes was sort of the attack, which, as we talked about, there's particularly in the front two, there's not necessarily a lot of mobility there. Even Jordan Rhodes, I think, did quite well, sort of working the channels. The part of the game I did watch, but for Hull, Longman came in, was the one change. Christie was playing on the wing again. Although I'm not sure that will last, particularly because when they made the tactical change, they moved him to fullback and brought an actual winger on. So the Huddersfield's opening goal, Kamara, who almost gave the ball away in the move, then picked it up after the Hull player couldn't quite sort of pick it up on a under-hit pass. He flashed the ball across and Coyle headed it into his own goal. Almost the worst of both worlds in that he didn't get a strong enough contact on it to direct it wide. But just enough on it to send it into the goal. And then on the second goal, retrieved by Ward, and he sort of lifted it to the far post, and Hellick from about a yard out couldn't miss as long as he made contact. yeah, I'm not sure how good either of these teams are, but I did feel like Huddersfield were better than Hull in this game, at least in the part I watched. I don't know what you have to say on either team, Dan.
So Luton played Huddersfield in midweek, and they caused problems from set pieces. Basically, all goals came from that. Hull, I've seen a few. I don't know how Hull have any points this season. They're worse than
It's Stupinjan's goals. That's basically it.
I know, but I don't know how he ever gets the ball from what I've seen of it. Um, th- they're worse than Peterborough and Barnsley were last year, I think. If they continue, I'm not saying they don't have players, but there's no structure to the way they play. They're too easy to pass through. They can't defend a set piece. They just spend the whole time passing up to Estupinan, who tries and falls over and wins a free kick. Unless they change drastically, Hull are going down.
Yeah, I think
Huddersfield,
it's slightly bizarre for a team that struggles to control the game in midfield that for the last 2 or 3 games, Jean-Michel Seri has been on the bench.
it is
I also think I feel a bit sorry for I've already forgotten the name of the guy in charge.
Dawson.
Who clearly thought he was going to have to take charge in midweek and then be done with it, and then the manager they were going to bring in, who came over to Hull to watch the game, they then couldn't meet his demands or whatever, which all sounds a bit, you know, you question the process there. You questioned the process on the pitch. Sounds like you have to question the process off the pitch as well.
I've been questioning it since the start of the season.
In terms of flying a manager over, having him watch the game, and then failing to reach terms with him. We'll see what they end up with, but I feel a little bit because he clearly thought he wasn't going to have to take charge of this weekend's game, and then did. But yeah, it's not great there. Big for Huddersfield to get 3 points on the board. Like you say, I do think that there's some interest in terms of their set piece success. Which is where I might at certain points look at someone like Sorba Thomas. But I wouldn't be rushing to get anyone from either of these teams at this point.
No.
So that's all the games. We did get there, even though I tried to forget Huddersfield Hull. So we'll get on to questions now. We've had a few in. So we'll start with Shedabi has asked us. He says, I still have both Middlesbrough wingbacks. Are they worth starting this week and hoping both play?
I have no idea.
Who do they even play this week?
Blackburn at home.
Blackburn at home. Oh God.
I don't even know.
I'm gonna have a total cop out and say it genuinely depends what other fires you have to put out in your team. If you are happy with the rest of your team, I would sell one of them. I would probably only sell one of them, but if you're genuinely happy with the rest of your team and have nothing else to do, I would sell one of them.
Good luck deciding which one.
Yeah. I'm not telling you which one because I don't know which one, but that would be my answer there. Robin FPL Red Arrow has asked us the current optimal front three. Oh, he's got 3 questions, so I'll start with that. Current optimal front three.
Pookie. I don't think it is optimal. Do you? I think everyone will have Victor.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue against him at the moment in terms of going in. Optimal at the moment, particularly because they have the double. I'm still going to say Pookie.
Yeah.
I had it at one point. I might say the Norwich double up, Pookie Sargent. don't really like any of the others. I'll say Pookie Sergeant Victor, with Keane narrowly missing out. But, their run is tough. In the next 4, they do play Middlesbrough, QPR and Watford.
Yeah. It's pretty similar.
But, it's hard for some of the other teams to argue for anyone, so...
I think if you want to keep Brereton Diaz...
Yeah, I suppose Brereton Diaz,
yeah.
Shout.
But then you'll probably need him to fund other things, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but in terms of like the optimal, like if you're just isolating the front 3, probably one Norwich forward, Brereton Diaz, and I'll say Keane because that's sort of where one place you're saving a bit of the money, but Victor will come into that.
Yeah, with 2 doubles, I think.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to have him from 17 to 20, I think. It should.
Robin then also asks us the key players from game week 15 to 20. Well, you've just mentioned Victor. I think he's a key one.
It's tricky, isn't it? I think everyone's going to have Pookie now with the double.
Yeah.
Rotherham double, but
there's no key players there.
There's no key players. Maybe a goalie. You never know what boost we get.
Yeah. I'm going to say Chair as well. I'm just going to keep saying Chair.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep... Bree.
Yeah, Chair and Bree.
Even with the run Luton have.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing with Chair as well. Like, it's a good fixture run, double in 20.
Yeah.
He can basically do nothing and pick up the bonus. So, I'll say him. And Robin has asked a third question, saying, is it time to bin the Boro and Preston defence? So we've covered the Boro defence. We don't need to sort of dwell on that. The Preston defence, would you be binning them now?
I don't think it's essential. I know they're not going to have the double. But I think we're going to have other things to do. And like Brady's now playing in the 10 now.
Yeah.
And he's going to get clean sheet points.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me is if you have Brady or Fernandez, fine. If you have Woodman, I'd probably be moving him. Because that's an easy place to go for the doubles in terms of a doubling goalkeeper.
And you save money.
Yeah. You can go down to Johansson or Wilson at Coventry. So Woodman, I would definitely say I'd move off. As much as we don't like making keeper transfers, it's just an easy move for the double. Even if you went to one of the more expensive goalkeepers from Burnley or Norwich for the double and then went to a different one, you definitely don't want to be making 2 goalkeeper transfers. But I would be saving money at the goalkeeper position now. Even though Woodman's been great, I would probably recommend selling him at this point. Shebedebe has also asked us another question. And he said, would you hold Brereton or transfer him to Rodriguez with the double in mind?
That's tricky, tough, isn't it?
Especially because you think about it, the double, they play Sunderland away and Norwich at home. In 17, Blackburn play Birmingham at home. Now, I know we're saying Birmingham have been better recently, but is Brereton Diaz's 1 fixture better than Rodriguez's 2?
I'd like to know what other strikers you're going to have. I'm guessing he's going to have Victor and Pookie, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of having Jay Rodriguez, so my answer is generally speaking going to be not to go with him. But I do understand with the double, you're getting 2 shots at it. So I'd potentially move him, but it's very close.
Yeah, I agree.
we have a question from FPL Frustration. They have asked us, what are your thoughts on holding Norwich assets for the upcoming double, which is arguably the toughest two fixtures, Sheffield United and Burnley away? I'm thinking of Aaron's in particular.
Well, I have Aaron's, and I'm going to keep him now. I'm not wasting a transfer getting him out.
Yeah, I mean, I think
would
the
you buy
other thing
him?
to bear
I'm
in
not sure.
mind with those two is they're not necessarily like free scoring teams. So while they're difficult, particularly for your attacking players, you're like Sapuki and Sargent, they don't necessarily score lots of goals. So it's not necessarily bad fixtures for your defensive players. So I don't think someone like Aaron's really needs to be moved for that either.
But would you bring him in?
Possibly.
Yeah, just because you know he's going to play, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I looked at is, across the defence, and I think that there's points to be had. I'd probably go for Aaron's for the upside, but I think it's probably worth it. Like I say, I think you're probably going to get at least a couple of half clean sheets in there. You'd like to think so anyway, and if you're getting that, then it's probably a worthwhile move, even just that. Billy Hadaway asks us, which game week 20 doublers should we start thinking about bringing in now? Well, I think that requires them to have a good run beforehand, but in terms of bringing them in right away, I think the obvious place to go with that, just as a starting point, while I buy some time, is Coventry and Rotherham, because they double in 17 and 20. So Victor, maybe one of the defenders, someone like a Panzo or a Bidwell. For Rotherham, Johansson. There's also Wilson from Coventry. If you don't have Chair, if you've sold Chair for whatever reason to fund something else or to move it around for the double, he is a big one to get.
I also think this is a bit tricky because we know that as soon as the deadline hits, the new boosts are gonna drop, and if we get like home advantage where you're gonna want completely different players to what if it's a budget buster or anything like that. So it might be, as you said, maybe getting a Rotherham or a Coventry player this week, just so you know that they play in 17 and 20.
Yeah, that's where it's sort of almost the most urgent, because you're going to want them quicker. Whereas the game with 20 doublers, you're almost buying a little bit more time to get them in once you know what the boosts are and how you're going to want it. If it's a budget buster, if it's a home advantage, if you're just going to go with something like a goal fest, all of that changes who you might want. Whereas you're going to want those Coventry, Rotherham, you could even say Burnley, Norwich players.
Yeah.
Quicker. I know that Burnley and Norwich don't double in 20, which is why I say Coventry and Rotherham, but you're probably going to want those players first. So that's where, it potentially buys you a little bit more time. FPL Hindsight has asked us the best mid at 7.5 or under just for game week 15. It has have one in mind, but don't want to suggest it in case it comes across as a bit of a leading question. 7.5 or under just for game week 15.
I know who I would if I'm having a punt. I'd go Fleming from Millwall against
Under?
Bristol. Oh, I don't know, actually.
I just thought I actually have no idea what his price is.
I'll probably go up though this week.
Is he 7-4?
7-4. Yeah.
I think it was 7.5 or under, so
I think I'd
he
go him
counts.
because they're playing Bristol City.
Yeah.
Especially with their... Is he on set pieces?
Yeah. He's
Oh,
on at
well,
least some of them, if not all of them.
well, they just conceded 3 from set
Yeah.
pieces against a Millwall side. Uh-oh. I'd go Fleming.
I'm going to say Jack Clark.
Yep.
They play Huddersfield this week. It's obviously coming off a goal. Oh, no, they don't. They play Wigan this week. Or am I reading that wrong again?
No, it is Wigan.
Wigan. They play Wigan this week at home. He's coming fresh off a goal. I think it's potentially a decent game for him. So I'm going to go with Jack Clark.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I'm going to change my mind. I want it to be puntier. That's too obvious. I'm going to Heath Chong.
Ooh, that's a shout.
Against Hull.
Oh, against Hull. Oh,
yeah.
my word. They could bring in Bakuna, and you get the feeling Bakuna would like to do quite well against Hull.
Yeah, but I'm going Chong. Chong's my punt for game week 15.
I sort of feel like I need to bring Fleming in now. I've made such a statement because we all know how this is going.
Ron Mukherjee has asked us, what are your thoughts on the Middlesbrough wing backs at a premium price? Are they worth holding if they get rotated so often?
No.
We've discussed that to death. I don't think we sort of need to comment anymore. FPL Renard 9 asks us, best forward 7 million or under can be benched for game week 15. Well, I would have said Godden, and then he got benched, and when I was thinking about it, where it's like if they want to bring anyone else in, he'll be the one that gets left out, I now don't like him anymore.
I just think that's just the odd thing. I think Godden's first choice.
Yeah, it's almost just the reliability issue for me. I'd probably still say Will Keane.
McBurney's only 7.
I'm dedicated to never recommending or owning Ollie McBurney, so I couldn't throw him out there. Yeah, some of these other teams it becomes
You can't even go Bristol City because you just don't know who's going to play.
Yeah. Or particularly if you're going to be benching them in game week 15, I'm going to say Jerry Yates.
Jerry Yates.
You avoid them away at Sheffield United.
Yeah.
And then they play Hull.
Yeah.
Then they play. They do have
That's
Preston,
decent
Coventry,
run.
and they double.
Yeah.
So yeah. Apparently, I'm just recommending wild punts now. Yeah, I think Godden is still a decent shout. But yeah, otherwise I'd say someone like Will Keane, or Jerry Yates. And Jordan with the last question: would you get Teller or Ogbene in next?
Oh God, that's hard. I think Teller.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite easy, but
yeah,
I'd go Teller. I have Ogbene, but I would say Teller. Ogbene might well start returning again, but it sort of dried up for him while Teller is actually returning. So it's almost as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, Bene does have Huddersfield this week and a double, including Hull in 17, but I'd probably still look to Teller first. But I might well be looking to have both, or certainly a Rotherham mid and Teller by 17 anyway.
Yeah.
So that's all the questions. We've been going for quite a while now.
We need Jamie back because he'll stop this.
Yeah.
How long we're going.
Yeah, Jamie will sort of crack down. Jamie would have been with us. He was sick last week, so he couldn't record, and then he's off in Spain this week. So
not sunny though.
At least not the victory centres. What was it yesterday?
No.
So he will be back, and he'll keep us on a tighter leash. Although there was quite a lot to cover in this set of games, so I'll hide behind that excuse. Try and get this out Sunday night, so you've got time to sort of listen to it. If not, it will be out on Monday. By the time you're listening you'll know whether I got it out on Sunday or Monday. So we will be, as I said, we'll be back doing the spaces on Thursday. So we will also discuss what happened in the 2 midweek games and look ahead to game week 15.
New boosts, Angus. That's big news.
Yeah.
As in the new set of boosts rolling in.
The new set of boosts. So after the game, some point after the game week 15 deadline, we'll find out what the next set of boosts are. We won't do anything special as such in terms of like a separate podcast to discuss them. We'll discuss them on the game week 15 review, but I'm sure we'll have to have a segment almost to discuss them. Hopefully some of the games are boring, so we can discuss them and still keep the pod to a reasonable length. I think that's it. Obviously we couldn't do the spaces this week, so this coming week will be the first one recorded, and going forward that'll be our sort of content schedule, so you will be getting 2 things from us a week. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.